So there's a lot of history for this sort of thing. And the news today that Donald Trump fired his campaign manager this morning, it is very dramatic news. It has dominated political news all day. But history, honestly, does not tell us any one thing about what that might mean. I mean, a lot of Democrats, a lot of Trump critics were very gleeful today that this shows how badly Donald Trump is flailing in his presidential campaign. That may be true. But firing his campaign manager may also be a sign that the Donald Trump campaign is about to stop flailing. What if the reason they were flailing was the guy who they just fired? I mean, how much of the incredibly poor management of the Donald Trump for President campaign is attributable to the candidate himself and therefore intrinsic to any campaign staff? And how much of it was just due to bad campaign management? Because honestly, a C student sixth grader could probably manage a campaign better than the Donald Trump general election campaign was being managed. And I don't say that just to be, ad hominem, and I'm just throwing that out there. I mean, just look at the known facts here. If you want to know if the Trump campaign is about to get better, consider some of the details about how bad they are now. I mean, this can be improved upon even if they bring in new campaign staff from a temp agency that rolls over every 4 days so nobody ever has to get paid benefits. I mean, look what they've got in place now. If you doubt that the Trump campaign is going to get better, think how much worse they could be than this. The Associated Press reports that as of this past Friday, the Trump campaign has a grand total of 30 paid staff on the ground. Now, that is not 30 paid staff at headquarters, at Trump Tower overseeing a nationwide operation of other paid staffers. They mean 30 paid staff in total for the whole country. For this country. There are 320 million people in this country. That means if you just wanted to divide up the population of the country among Trump staffers, you'd have one of those 30 Trump staffers covering the entire population of Wyoming, Vermont, D.C., Alaska, North Dakota, South Dakota, Delaware, Montana, Rhode Island, Maine, and New Hampshire combined. I mean, and that is kind of how they've divvied up the country, including the battleground states. The AP also reports that there is one paid Trump staffer in charge of, quote, an 11-state southeastern bloc, including the battleground states of Florida, North Carolina, and Virginia. One staffer in total for 11 states, including Virginia, North Carolina, and Florida. I mean, in a country with 320 million people, heck, in a country just with 50 states, how do you run a nationwide campaign with only 30 people trying to do the whole thing? The Washington Post made this, I think, helpful graph showing the Trump paid staff, the Trump payroll over time compared to the paid staff payrolls of the Clinton campaign, which is in dark blue, and the Sanders campaign, which is in light blue. The Trump number, see down there on the bottom, it looks like kind of a pimple on a large face. That's the Trump payroll compared to the Democratic payrolls for the Democratic primary thus far. The Washington Post also put out this rather dramatic graph showing ad spending in the battleground states. And this is actually what you're seeing right here on your screen. This is the comparable numbers from 2012. So this is comparable to now. This is June 2012, this time in the race, back when it was Barack Obama running against Mitt Romney. This shows the 8 hottest swing states in terms of what was going on with ad spending at this time 4 years ago. And it's an interesting story. A lot of the states, it was really close. Iowa, Virginia, New Hampshire, it's really close. You had Romney outspending Obama in North Carolina. You had Obama outspending Romney in Ohio and Florida. Interesting swing state numbers from the 2012 general election. Now, these are the comparable numbers from this year's general election. And this is actually a comparable graph. This is Republican spending and Democratic spending in these same states. Ohio, Florida, Nevada, Colorado, Virginia, North Carolina, Iowa, New Hampshire. And as in 2012, these blue bars represent Democratic spending this year, spending by or on behalf of Hillary Clinton in the swing states. And the reason you don't see any red bars on the 2016 part of the graph is because Donald Trump has spent nothing so far on ads in the swing states. So that's kind of stunning, right? I mean, it's already June. In an election year, we're heading into the conventions in just a couple of weeks. Donald Trump has a total of 30 people working for his campaign nationwide. He's just fired his campaign manager, so maybe that means we're down to 29 today. And you look at the swing states, Hillary Clinton is running the table. Trump is not even trying to compete in the swing states in terms of ads, which is the other big thing that campaigns spend money on besides people. It's very easy to look at all of that as a Trump critic or as a worried Republican or as a Democrat or Clinton supporter. It's very easy to look at all that data and be very smug about what's going on with Donald Trump. But there's a couple of problems with that smugness. Number one, we have no idea if Hillary Clinton's $20 million plus ad spending in the swing states and the gigantic advantage she's got in terms of the size of her campaign nationwide and in the swing states, we don't yet know if that's working. In the last swing state polling we got for any of the states where she's so radically outspending him on ads was the PPP poll we got last week from Virginia. And that poll did show Hillary Clinton winning in Virginia, but only by a whisker. She had a 3-point lead. That's within that poll's margin of error. I mean, if ad spending and the size of your campaign on the ground, if that was predictive for 2016 politics, then Jeb Bush or Scott Walker or somebody would be the Republican presidential nominee. Not this guy who spent basically 5 cents to win the Republican primary and who made it this far in presidential politics and dispatched 16 other rivals with a national campaign team that honestly could all fit into 2 elevators if everybody inhaled. And you didn't mind squishing up next to the political director guy on your left whose name you can never remember because wasn't there a new one last week? So I don't mean just to be my habitual cloud in Democrat silver lining. I mean, firing the campaign manager in June, once you've already got the nomination, that is undeniably some sign of desperation in the Trump campaign. It's definitely the biggest campaign change that Trump has implemented since he started running for president more than a year ago. Corey Lewandowski being fired as the Trump campaign manager has also resulted so far in one other high-profile resignation from the Trump campaign after another Trump advisor gleefully tweeted, "Ding dong, the witch is dead," when reports first surfaced that Corey Lewandowski was out. That guy quit, saying that was a bad move. But you know what? Even the circumstance of that guy having to quit too, that itself is a bad sign for the Trump campaign. Not just because of the indiscipline shown by the ding dong, the witch is dead tweeter guy. Yeah, yes, he showed indiscipline and that's bad. But more than that, consider the fact that everybody on the Trump campaign only found out their campaign manager had been fired when they read about it in the press. Corey Lewandowski was reportedly today marched out of Trump Tower by security. There was no staff email, no staff memo explaining what was going on. Everybody inside the Trump campaign just read about it in the newspaper like the rest of us schmoes. That is not a good sign. And there are other things about this firing and about what's going on in the Trump campaign right now that are, you know, at least weird, if not bad, signs of whatever's going on over there. New York Magazine and the New York Times were first to report today that the impetus for firing the campaign manager may have come from Mr. Trump's children. Really? That's weird. His kids are the ones running him for president? But then there's also just the Trump campaign's immediate plans. This week, with only 30 paid campaign staffers on the ground, while they're being radically outspent to the tune of over $20 million by the Clinton campaign in the swing states, while the Trump campaign is sending out emergency requests for donations like they did this weekend, telling their supporters they needed to raise $100,000 in one day in order to start running anti-Clinton ads. With the campaign manager being fired, with their convention less than a month away, this would seem like an inopportune time for candidate Trump to leave the country. But he's in fact about to leave the country. He's planning on going to Scotland this week to attend to some business matters. We're going to have more on that in just a moment. But it is a weird decision for somebody who's running for president right now. So there are a lot of things going on with the Donald Trump for President campaign, which would seem to indicate that it is being poorly run. But there are 2 notes of caution here. First of all, we don't know if this means that his campaign is failing, even if it is poorly run. This poorly run, barely staffed, cheap, outgunned mess of a campaign is how they got this far. So don't feel too, smug that the Trump campaign is going to fail, given their record of absolutely not failing thus far. That's part of it. Here's the other part of it. If you are heartened by the Trump campaign being poorly run, it should be bad news to you that the guy who was running it so poorly has just been fired. If you want Trump to lose, you should have been rooting for the guy who's been running this mess of a campaign to stay right until the end. Is this actually, with the campaign manager being fired, is this actually day one of the Trump campaign getting their act together? And if so, how will we know?
College is tough. When I'm cramming for exams and missing mom's cooking, it's good to know that Discover Student Loans help me cover my college costs.
3.5 GPA? What now?
I also got a cash reward for my good grades.
Get cash rewards for good grades. Learn more at Discover Student Loans.